TGIF edition of the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Yale here on 97.3 ESPN. Holy Toledo. I did not expect to be talking more NFL draft today, but I am talking more NFL draft today. The Eagles made a move. The Dolphins are making moves. The 49ers are making moves. What the heck is going on? A Friday news dump for you on March 26th in the NFL. Sixers win another game last night. They trade for George Hill. Phillies are a week away, actually less than a week away from opening day. UFC 260 tonight. We have 4 hours to chat with you, and I'm all for it. Hope you're all having a great day. Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. We have trades, ladies and gentlemen. We have deals. Here is the lowdown. The Philadelphia Eagles are no longer picking 6 overall. So the majority of our conversations that we've been having for the last, 2 months, we can just throw it out the window. It's just thrown out the window. Doesn't matter anymore. The Philadelphia Eagles are now picking 12th overall. Basically, in a couple different trades today, the Miami Dolphins are basically reshuffling the deck for the entire draft. So the Dolphins first traded the 3rd overall pick to the 49ers for the 12th overall pick and some 3rd round picks, some comp picks, and some 1st round picks in 2022 and 2023. Easy for me to say. Now, immediately the Dolphins got right back into the 1st round. Top 10. Because they called the Eagles and they said, hey, we got a ton of 1st round picks now. You want some? The Eagles said, sure, why not? The Eagles trade the 6th pick. They get the 12th pick now, the Eagles. They also get the Dolphins' 2022 1st round pick. They are also swapping mid-round picks, the Eagles at 156. They move up to 123. So, what does all of this mean? First of all, the Dolphins are basically trading their 1st round picks because they have the 49ers' 1st round picks. That's kind of why that's going on. Number 2, the Eagles are now out of the top 10 altogether. So all of our conversations about Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, quarterbacks, it's all out the window. What this means is that the Philadelphia Eagles are telling you 2 things. Number 1, they are serious about Jalen Hurts being their quarterback. Number 2, they are serious about building long-term. This was more than just this year. The Eagles could potentially, if Carson Wentz doesn't implode in Indianapolis, this could be 3 first-round picks next year. Not 1, not 2, 3 first-round picks next year. That's the second thing to keep in mind. Number 4, don't overlook the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles now have 12 picks in this draft. I don't think they're done. This is not going to be the last trade they make. They are going to make more deals. I promise you that. They are going to make more trades. This Eagles team jumping all over the place, making deals. The Dolphins, they may be in a top pick, but the Eagles now have extra 1st-round picks. The Eagles have a ton of picks in this draft. Remember, 2/3, 2/5. You don't think they're going to move around more trades? They're going to make more deals. It might not all be 1st-round picks, but it might be 2nd-round picks. You guys heard me talk about before here on 97.3 ESPN. I want the Eagles to get as many picks at the top of the 2nd round as possible. Try to parlay some of these picks now to get back into the 2nd round. Because you can get 1st-round talent in the 2nd round. Guys like T. Higgins, who had a great season with the Bengals, he was a 2nd-round pick. Michael Pittman, who has turned into the number 1 target for the Colts, he was a 2nd-round pick. There are a ton of guys in the past who have been picked in the 2nd round who are talented players. We talked about Asante Samuel Jr. earlier. And moving down in the drafts also puts the Eagles into a question of now they don't have to be in the middle of the quarterback fiasco. Now they can turn around and say, we are solely focusing on building this football team. How do you feel about this? The Eagles are now 12th overall in the NFL draft. They get first-round picks the next couple of years. They also have a situation where they have more than enough picks. Of course, Football on 4 with NFL Insider Adam Caplan coming up at 4 p.m. today, because he will have the latest of all the information, all the insights on what is going on with this, because this is a huge, huge deal. You are no longer 6 overall. More information over at 973ESPN.com. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show as we are live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. It's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Bike at Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Get a couple of your comments in here in just a moment, but before we get to your comments, I want to bring up one more point about this. When you start going through the different mock drafts out there, now obviously a lot of these mock drafts are based on who was picking previously in some of these spots. But if you are to break down who could be going where, first of all, I think the 49ers trading up is about a quarterback. I don't want to hear the 49ers saying, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo is our quarterback, blah, blah, blah. No, this is about getting a quarterback for the Jets and the 49ers. We've all heard that there are going to potentially be 3 or 4 quarterbacks drafted in the top 4 picks. It seems more likely now. That's the first thing to keep in mind. Second thing to keep in mind. If we are to project out with the Eagles moving down the 12th overall, here are some of the players who could be available in that range. Patrick Surtain, Alabama. J.C. Horn, South Carolina. Caleb Farley, Virginia Tech. Those are 3 cornerbacks. The top 3 defensive backs in this draft are all projected to be in around that range. Jonathan Gannon, new defensive coordinator, defensive backs coach. I don't think that's a coincidence. There's also a possibility that after all the dust settles with all these trades and all these guys moving around, how many of the wide receivers get bumped down a little bit? Does Jalen Waddle fall to 12th because he's coming off of an injury? And Jalen Waddle coming into the year was considered the best of the 2 Alabama receivers. Now, Devonta Smith may be picked ahead of him just because of the fact that he won the Heisman Trophy. I know the Eagles don't draft linebackers in the first round, but Micah Parsons is probably going to be sitting there hanging out waiting for you. So you can go defense, you can go offense. And I already see some of you guys commenting on the text board and on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Yes, you are now behind the Giants and the Cowboys. That's pointed out here by Nowhere. I think it's less about the Giants and the Cowboys than it's about the Eagles are targeting. I think the Eagles have intel that they know that a certain group of players are going to be available at 12th overall. I think that's what this is about. Do not overlook the fact that the Eagles, listen, you got a lot of teams wanting to move up for these quarterbacks. This is a quarterback-hungry league, and they're not all going to pan out. So when you look at, for example, Trey Lance, big pro day, he looks great. Fine, he looks great in shorts and a T-shirt. Somebody fell in love. Remember Dave Gettleman said he saw Daniel Jones and he fell in love? GMs and coaches fall in love with players all the time. So what you're hoping is that the Giants and the Cowboys fall in love with somebody ahead of you. I know Caleb Farley is considered by some to be the best corner in this draft. I am very, very nervous about the multiple back injuries, him taking off for an entire year. Is he an injury-prone guy? He may have all the physical tools, but if the Cowboys pick him at 10th overall, I'm not exactly sweating that. Now, the Giants have already signed a cornerback and a wide receiver. There's a possibility they may not go after either one. Do they go after the offensive tackle Darrisaw from Virginia Tech at 11th overall, leaving the Eagles to choose between Surtain and Horn? Also, as I said, one of the Alabama wideouts may drop to you because this draft is just going nuts. This is going to go absolutely nuts because now San Francisco is sitting all the way up at third. Huge deal. So if the Jaguars get Trevor Lawrence, the Jets, we assume, will take a quarterback unless they trade out too. We keep hearing the chatter about Zach Wilson. 49ers are third, probably Justin Fields. What do the Falcons do? Do they get the quarterback Trey Lance, who is the project? Or do one of the other two quarterbacks drop to him? Because now there's talk that the Jets are in love with Trey Lance, the guy who's started a total of 17 games? That's exciting. I'm not big on Trey Lance. I haven't been. So for the Eagles to drop all the way to 12th, I know it looks strange because they are behind the Cowboys and the Giants, but there has to be some specific reason why. And I'm starting to wonder, is it because your defensive coordinator is a defensive backs coach? Just a possibility. By the way, shout out to Jeff Bone and Pookie, Josh Stewart, all watching on the YouTube stream. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Also get to your text messages as well, 609-403-0973. I do want to address this one message on the YouTube channel. Raheem on YouTube says, Howie needs to be fired. Okay, so let's fire the guy who just acquired you potentially 3 first-round picks next year. You're walking into the draft with 12 picks overall. You're probably going to be making more deals. You're going to be getting inexpensive talent. You want the old saying is you want as many shots at making the right pick. You don't want to just make one good pick and then hope for the best. Come on. I think how we were talking about for 2 months, what if the Eagles trade down? Well, they just traded down. Now everybody hates it. Not everybody. I mean, at least one guy hates it. How does he need to be fired? I think we need to see what the Eagles actually do before we sit there and determine who should or shouldn't be fired. How about we let the offseason play out? (609-403-0973) is expert. Joey D. and Ventnor chimes in. He says, Josh, do the Eagles now lose out on Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts? The answer is yes. There's no way Pitts and Chase are falling out of the top 10. So you're not getting either one of those guys at all. This is a move, in my opinion. The Eagles are going to try to go get some defense or a player that they know is going to slip, whether it's like a Jalen Waddle or something like that. Listen, I'm disappointed to see them lose out on Chase. I was being sold on the idea of Kyle Pitts, but I wasn't 100% on board. I think Kyle Pitts is going to be a phenomenal NFL talent. I like Jamar Chase a lot. I think he's a legit X-receiver. But for whatever reason, the Eagles think it's more valuable to have double-digit draft picks than it is to pick at 6 overall. And they think it's more valuable to get potentially 3 first-round picks next year than they do feel like it's important to get a superstar potential guy this year. Now, that's up to conversation. What do we value more? Do we value the 2022 NFL draft more than 2021? I mean, that's subjective. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know every player in the 2022 NFL draft, but there are good guys drafted every year. I think that when it comes to the Eagles, yes, when you look at the potential of what they could do with Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts, this changes the conversation. I think this focuses in on defense. I think that's where we're going here. We got Matt watching on Facebook. Matt says, I like the move a lot. Other comments, people don't like the move. Star Trooper on YouTube says the Eagles are great at drafting. Listen, the idea of the Eagles being poor at drafting, and we've documented this before here on 97.3 ESPN. This idea that the Eagles are poor at drafting is very, very obtuse. And if you don't know what obtuse is, go look it up in the dictionary. I can't help you. But seriously, it's limited because what are we drawing off of? Are we drawing off of what, just first-round picks? Are we pulling off of overall picks? Are we pulling off of what? See, that's the problem when we have these conversations. How are we gauging the Eagles' draft success? All right? First of all, I'm a big believer in you need to give a guy at least 3 years to find out what he's going to be. I don't make judgments on guys after 1 or 2 seasons. If you're going to make judgments off a guy after 1, 2 seasons, I can't have a conversation with you. I can't. So if you're the Eagles and I'm going to make a judgment on you, certain guys, I just can't. I just can't sit here and make a judgment on Andre Dillard yet. What is Andre Dillard? I have no idea what Andre Dillard is. I think Andre Dillard can be a good NFL player. I still do. Will he be? I don't know. I don't know. Time will play it out. Eagles draft history. Let's go back to 2018 real quick. Dallas Goedert, potential Pro Bowler. Avonte Maddox. He's played better in the slot and safety than outside corner, so maybe in Jonathan Gannon's system he'll have better playing time. Josh Sweat, impact player. Matt Pryor, that's extremely disappointing, but he was a 6th-round pick. Jordan Mailata, looks like he's your starting left tackle of the future. 7th-round pick, project. Not a bad draft. Not a great draft, but not a bad draft. 2017 is where it gets a little dicey to me. I think Derek Barnett has not played up to expectations, only 19.5 sacks over the last few years. Sidney Jones, bust, gone. Rasul Douglas didn't work out, playing a lot better in a different defensive scheme. Matt Collins, he was a special teamer, didn't do much of anything for you. Donald Pumphrey, bust out of the league. Shelton Gibson, bust. Nathan Gary, 5th-round pick, didn't like the pick then, still like the pick now. You could argue that the entire 2017 draft was potentially a waste outside of Barnett being a okay player. 2016, Carson Wentz. Well, he did go to a Pro Bowl. Isaac Seumalo, the starting left tackle. Wendell Smallwood, not on the team anymore. Vaitai, starting left tackle when he won the Super Bowl. Blake Countess, special team guy wandering around the league. Jalen Mills, 7th-round find. Couple players in that draft. And I keep going. But the point is that this narrative that the Eagles can't draft is subjective because what you're doing is you're only pointing to a handful of situations. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Yell here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Eagles have traded the 6th overall pick to get the 12th overall pick the Dolphins got from the 49ers. The Eagles are also getting the Dolphins' 2022 first-round pick. The Dolphins, the Eagles are also swapping picks. The Eagles are moving up from 156 to 123. That is some of the latest of what is going on there. Al Fisher watching on Facebook. What's up, Al? Al says it's disappointing to miss out on Pitts or Chase, but I absolutely love this move. This might indicate a pickup Surtain or even Waddle. Listen, if you walk out of this draft with Surtain or Waddle, I think that you still come out with a win. I think that is where I would gauge that. You can still walk out of this with a win. Surtain and Waddle, to me, are guys that I personally think I can't miss guys. Because, to me, they are the type of player that when you think about what they can do in the NFL, Alabama players project very well to the NFL. There's only a handful of guys who haven't played well, and one of them was because he was a complete drug mess situation. Rolando McClain could have been a great linebacker if he wouldn't have dealt with drugs and been a domestic violence abuser. Aside from that, he would have been fine. Right? But seriously, Alabama guys are really good. Look at Washington. They got two of them. Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. They're pretty darn good. If you can walk out of this draft with Surtain or Waddle, I agree with Al. That's a win. I think that is a situation where you can do pretty well. Get a comment in here on the Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter streams before we hit the text board at 609-403-0973. Adam Gibbs says on YouTube, so you got to hope 4 quarterbacks go to the top 10 to possibly get Waddle, or maybe if he falls that far, Smith. Well, I think you got to hope. I think 4 quarterbacks are going in the top 8 no matter what. Because we know Carolina has been salivating over the young quarterbacks. We know that the 49ers, they didn't trade up to a top 3 pick to not get a quarterback. Unless you're going to pick Penei Sewell, which would make no sense, though, because you just gave Trent Williams record money as an offensive tackle. What are the 49ers going to do? Draft Jamar Chase 3rd overall? I mean, that would surprise me, to say the least. So, even if the quarterbacks don't go in the top 5, they might go in the top 10. I'm assuming they are. All the intel out there, Adam says they are going to. So, guys are going to drop. Guys are going to slip. Guys who are going to have chips on their shoulders. They're going to go into the season saying, this team passed on me, that team. Look at J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt is going to the Hall of Fame one day. I think we all can agree on that, right? J.J. Watt is a Hall of Fame guy in the making. J.J. Watt was the 11th overall pick in the 2011 NFL Draft. There were 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks picked ahead of him. Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker, and Cam Newton. Jake Locker isn't in the league anymore. Blaine Gabbert is basically a perennial backup, but Cam Newton, he did win an MVP. He was the first overall pick. The guys who were picked ahead of a guy can make him drop. And 2 of those quarterbacks didn't deserve to be picked ahead of him at all. Now, this was a really good draft as well, 2011. Von Miller, A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones, Tyron Smith. But J.J. Watt's going to the Hall of Fame. He was the 11th overall pick. The Eagles are the 12th pick. You can get some good players at 12th overall, and I'm excited about it. I think that this opens up a whole new opportunity to go defense. If they go defense, I like that move. All right, we got more text messages. A ton of you guys on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Keep them coming. Josh Hennig here, TGIF Friday on 97.3 ESPN. The Sports Bash being brought to you by John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Get yours online at deere.com. That's DERE.com. All right, Eagles make the deal. They have the 12th overall pick now from the 49ers by way of the Dolphins. The Dolphins are at 6. The 49ers are at 3. The Eagles are at 12. What do you think? 609-403-0973. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app for your Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, and Phillies coverage. 97.3ESPN.com. We got a lot to get to coming up today. Frank Close will give us an update on the Phillies ahead of opening day. We are less than a week away at 2:40 p.m. Inside the Sixers with Paul Hudrick. We are a day after the trade deadline. Where do the Sixers stand in the buyout market? NFL Insider Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. UFC fighter Sean O'Malley, one of the fastest rising stars in the UFC, fights at UFC 260 tomorrow. And then happy hour Friday with the PT at 5:20 tonight. All still to come on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a TGIF Friday on 97.3 ESPN. A lot of reaction flowing in right now about the Eagles moving down in the draft. I got a lot of texts, a lot of messages to get to. We'll get to them right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, I'm gonna try to rapid fire some of you guys because some of you guys I can't get to all of you right now, but we're gonna get to as many of you as possible. I'm gonna start on the text board though really quick. Cole from LBI chimes in. I like this move from Howie. You guys get Eagle fans 3 first-round picks next season when there should be a full college season to scout players. Teams loading up for next year is smart. Excellent point by Cole. This year's draft is a bit of a mosh-mish mess because when you think about it, there are a bunch of players that didn't even play this year. Micah Parsons, Caleb Farley, Penei Sewell. It's hard to evaluate players when there's a messy NFL college season. We don't even know what the prospects from the year before are because you have an entire draft class of players from 2020 who got no preseason this year. How am I supposed to fully evaluate a player if I don't have a full tape of evaluation? The Eagles potentially having 3 first-round picks next year means that they are going to have a regular year to evaluate college talent. It's a great point by Cole and LBI. Another text at 609-403-0973. Angel and Violence says, according to ESPN, last total 5 years of picks, only 1 player Pro Bowler drafted by the Eagles. Now, here's the thing. You mentioned the last 5 years. I mentioned this earlier. I understand the stat, and the stat is true. Or ESPN would have put it out there. But you're including the 2020 NFL draft. You're including 2029. Andre Dillard missed a year with an injury. You have Miles Sanders, who maybe if Doug Peterson wasn't so stubborn, they would have used him better. I think we all believe that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's just not going to work out. But last year's guys, Jalen Reagor missed time with an injury. Jalen Hurts and Davion Taylor and Kevon Wallace were all supposed to be guys who were not supposed to be impact players immediately, but for a year or two from now. So if you want to go 5 years from 2018 and back, that would be 2018, 17, 16, 15, 14. Now, in that time frame, here's a problem with that stat. Howie Roseman wasn't drafting some of those players. The 2015 and 2014 drafts are clearly Chip Kelly picks. So now the stat about the Pro Bowlers only becomes 3 years instead of 5. Because when we go back to Howie Roseman's draft in 2013, when he picked Lane Johnson and Zach Ertz, Pro Bowlers. Boom. If you want to criticize Howie and the Eagles for taking Derek Barnett and Sidney Jones, fine. You also got to blame Joe Douglas. If you want to blame the Eagles for going out there and selecting Shelton Gibson and Donald Pumphrey in the mid-rounds, I mean, we can spend an entire 2 hours breaking down who they should have picked in different drafts because hindsight's always 2020. I think Dallas Goedert's going to be a Pro Bowler. I really do. I think he's got that kind of tight end potential. So, I mean, you have a guy who already has 12 touchdowns in a couple of years receiving, and he was the number 2 tight end for the team. I think that 12 touchdowns in 42 games is a good number, and it's a good sign of where he's going to get to. So, for me, I understand the stat, but I feel like some of the numbers are fudged because we're kind of creating stats at this point to try to fit a narrative. All right, let's get to some of your comments on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All of you guys watching on the show. Again, if you want to watch the show, go to 973ESPN.com or follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Now, I want to address the one really quick. Star Trooper on YouTube says there's a report the Eagles try to get number 3. So here's the context of that. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network. Now, I'm going to read you both of his tweets because there's 2 different tweets. At 1:35, Rap Sheet reported, the official icon. I'm having to read off my phone because apparently it's not showing up on his regular Twitter feed, which I find very suspicious. I wonder if he might have scrubbed it. You know, sometimes these guys who are, a little too sensitive, they scrub things at times. But I'm going to read you the 1:35 tweet before I read you the 2:03 tweet. Ian Rappaport, verified checkmark. The Eagles tried to trade up to number 3, but they would only do it for Zach Wilson, source said. Instead, they got back out, get an extra first rounder, and continue to build. Now, a half hour later, Ian Rappaport then, for lack of a better term, cleaned up what he was saying. And here is what he cleaned up. Rephrasing an earlier tweet for clarity. Because this is what happens sometimes. And guys put out tweets to try to be the first person, and they maybe got to clean up the information. 2:03 p.m. Early on in the draft process. I think that's what I meant. Process, not prospect. He's typing a little too fast. The Eagles felt Zach Wilson was a strong prospect. For where they are, they felt moving back and collecting future first-rounders was a better way to build a team. First of all, they're right. The Eagles have way more problems than quarterback. Quarterback is not solving you having 4 wins last year. You would have won a couple more games last year if you had a better quarterback, but you had a billion injuries on the offensive line. Your linebackers were Alex Singleton and nobody, except for TJ Edwards for 2 games. Roddy McLeod tore up his knee, ended for the year. They had numerous injuries in the secondary. This team needs depth. They need talent. So Zach Wilson was never going to solve these problems. Now, I talked with Andrew DeCecco yesterday. Him and I both agree we don't think Zach Wilson's potential is better than Jalen Hurts. So the Eagles may have felt Zach Wilson was a strong prospect. Doesn't mean they were ever going to draft him. So that's where that came from. John on YouTube says, getting 3 picks next year says they're hedging their bet with Jalen Hurts. If he disappoints, they have 3 picks to move up for a quarterback. That is true as well. You're preparing if something doesn't go well. On YouTube, Derek chimes in. I'll take Surtain all day. I'm with you, Derek. I love Surtain's talent. I love his potential. I think Surtain has a chance to be an amazing cornerback in the NFL. Let's get one more in here before we hit the break here. We have Frank Close coming up on the other side to get more into the state of the Phillies. Jeff Bonin Pookie with a uncommon opinion here. He says, I trust Howie. Just hope he doesn't forget about the offensive line and our whole defense. I'm telling you, Jeff, I'm wondering if this pick is specifically about defense. They may be trading down just because they need defense. Do not be surprised if they walk out of this with a cornerback in the first round and then maybe a wide receiver in the second round, or vice versa. Let me ask you guys a question. There's no right answer to this, so I'm not going to judge anybody if they disagree or agree. If the Eagles walk out of the first 2 rounds with Patrick Surtain and Asante Samuel Jr. with their first 2 draft picks, how do you feel about that? Chew on that. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Your thoughts on that. Also, more your comments, 609-403-0973. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Don't forget, 973ESPN.com for your Phillies, Sixers, Flyers, Eagles coverage. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill, TGIF edition of the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, I'm Josh Hennig, live at the Matt Black Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. The Philadelphia Eagles have traded down from 6 to 12. What do you guys think? Adam Caplan, NFL insider, co-host of the Insider Podcast, will join us at 4 p.m. with the latest on everything we need to know. 609-403-0973 is the text board. With all your comments on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. In just a moment, just want to remind everybody that the Sports Bash this hour is being brought to you by Dorothy Gale Roofing. There is no place like your home. And if you have a leak or need a new roof, call Dorothy Gale Roofing at 877-97-KEVIN or visit them online at dorothygale.com for Dorothy Gale Roofing. All right. A lot to digest with them trading down. And I asked the question, because people are really going back and forth. Was it worth it? Was it a good idea? Was it a bad idea? But I'm seriously asking, what if the Eagles just said, nah, offense, we're not interested in the wide receivers. We're going cornerbacks. We're going Patrick Surtain in the first round, Asante Samuel Jr. in the second round. Was trading down worth it? Poll question up right now at 973 ESPN on Twitter. We will get to your reactions as well here on the stream. A bunch of people commenting on the stream. Elliot on YouTube chimed in a little bit earlier about the Eagles trading down. And he says, Falcons, Bengals, 49ers, Panthers, Broncos, Cowboys, Giants all don't need wide receivers. I mean, the 49ers, you could argue they do, but you don't trade up to third overall. Maybe they did. Look, I know the Schefter report out there is that the 49ers say that Jimmy Garoppolo is their quarterback this year. So I'm not going to throw out the window the idea of them drafting a wide receiver like Jamar Chase. I don't foresee a scenario where you trade up the top 3 in the draft to pick a wide receiver. I just don't see that happening. But you're right about the other teams. So there's a possibility the wide receiver could follow the Eagles. Michael Lenhart chimes in on Facebook watching the show, says, I like the trade down, but do you think Howie has another move up his sleeve considering he wanted Zach Wilson? And this is, Michael, I'm glad you asked this question because we started about this a little bit last hour. All right, how do I say this without being overly mean? It's the question. So, Ian Rappaport has a history of getting Eagles news wrong. There have been multiple times in the last few years he has reported things about the Eagles and ended up being completely not true. So, with that in mind, how much credit do I give to a report about the Eagles' interest in a player when part of the report says that they were interested, they thought he was a great prospect, but that they had more needs than quarterback to deal with? Again, I'm not trying to, spit on the guy. I'm not trying to bury him. But there is something to be said about the fact that Ian Rappaport has gotten things wrong. And you don't trade down the 12 if you really wanted Zach Wilson. If you really wanted Zach Wilson, you would have called the Jets. You would have called the Dolphins directly and said, I want to move up. You wouldn't have traded down the 12. So I think at this point, you don't have enough draft capital to trade back up to top 3, especially with the 49ers and Jets. I think the Jets and 49ers are staying put. I think the Jets end up eventually trading Sam Darnold, actually. That's what I think. I think Darnold might be on his way out the door with the Jets. Jeff Bonin Pookie asks, what are we doing with Ertz? What are you doing with Ertz? He's getting probably traded. The Eagles gave Ertz and his team permission to get out, to to go and look for a trade, all right? So it's one of those deals where he's probably going to be traded at some point. I'm assuming before the draft, because before the draft makes the most sense. I know there's a outside possibility he comes back, but I feel like that relationship is just too frayed and too messed up at this point for him to come back. And it would also save the Eagles money long term. They trade him. Couple more messages to get to on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A lot of you guys commenting. Adam Gaskell on Facebook says, what happened the last time they didn't surround their quarterback with talent? It's called Chip Kelly. That's what happened. Because Carson Wentz, remember, in 2019 when everybody got injured, he still had a really, really good December. He carried that team to a postseason berth. So it's not like that they've always done this. Chip Kelly kicked Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, LaShawn McCoy out of town in favor of Riley Cooper and Jordan Matthews. That wasn't how Roseman running the organization then. So I have more faith in the Eagles building around Hurts with Roseman than I did with what they were doing in 2014 and 2015, when I still don't know what Chip Kelly was thinking. So the fact that his ego was so huge, he couldn't get along with people. Again, the Eagles are trading back to 12th overall from 6th overall. They get a first-round pick next year. They get pick swap later in the draft with the Dolphins. So they are getting some draft capital out of this. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also, we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A ton of comments to get to here. Inside the Sixers with Paul Hudrick coming up in 12 minutes. Just kind of trying to peruse through some of the comments. We talked about Howie Roseman and the Pro Bowlers and the picks earlier. Chris Dunn on YouTube chimes in. How many Pro Bowlers has Howie picked out of how many picks? How many picks immediately after our picks became Pro Bowlers? Well, first of all, I could find the answer for you about the after your picks, but I would need about 24 hours and nothing else to do. So I literally have to do no other work but that, and I can find out for you, Chris. Listen, hindsight's 20/20. We can all go back and say what people should or shouldn't have done. Every team in the league passed on DK Metcalf twice. That looks like it was wrong. All right? Russell Wilson was not a first or second round pick. That looks like it was really wrong, right? We can go through all kinds of instances where players should have been drafted higher than they were. Why was E.J. Manuel a first-round pick, right? Why was Jake Locker picked ahead of J.J. Watt? I can go down the list. There's always situations where you can go what ifs, but it's usually a waste of time. Now, when it comes to the Pro Bowlers, my question when we keep bringing that up is, how do we gauge Goddard and Miles Sanders? They have not been selected to Pro Bowls, but they could be. Does that change the conversation? That's why I say you got to let things play out. Let me know what happens 5 years down the road. You need 4 or 5 years to find out how a draft class really plays out. Because you could argue Miles Sanders' rookie year, he was top 10 in all-purpose yards. Last year, we all agreed the Eagles misused him. So just because he's not a Pro Bowler yet, does that mean he was a bad pick by Howie? No, of course not. Was Dallas Goedert a bad pick? No, it wasn't. But there's no Pro Bowl next to their name, so that changes the stat. Get a couple more messages in here before we get to the text board at 609-403-0973. Thomas Fox on YouTube says, Kyle Pitts is going to slip to the Cowboys. He will make it miserable for the Birds next 10 years. I doubt he's slipping unless there's some groundbreaking news that discredits his character that we don't know about. Kyle Pitts is probably going 5th or 6th in the draft. I think he's either going to the Bengals or he's going to the Dolphins at 6. So he won't even be in the division. A couple more messages here on people watching the show. Oh my goodness, so many comments from you guys. I love this feedback. I'm trying to get to all of you guys as possible. B. Lizzle says Howie will grab a Pac-12 corner. Oh, that's funny. I like that. I don't even think there's a good Pac-12 corner draftable in the first round, honestly. To me, the best cornerbacks are Horn, Farley, and Surtain in no particular order, and none of them are Pac-12. So, but that is funny. It's a good job by you, B. Lizzle. You know, part of the reason why the Eagles have drafted so many guys to Pac-12 is because one of their best scouts is actually the Pac-12 scout. He's one of the senior scouts on the staff. And the majority of the guys you've seen who were drafted not in the Pac-12 were the Joe Douglas, Andy Weidel guys they brought with them to the Eagles organization. And the majority of the Pac-12 guys are the scouts who were here before Chip Kelly got here. So that's part of the reason why that happened. So just a little insight. Brandon Gibson says Micah Parsons is in play now. I know that would make a lot of people happy. I'm just not convinced that he is going to be the pick, but I would love it if he is. I think that'd be a good idea. Nowhere says the Eagles drafted Derek Barnett instead of Jonathan Allen. LMAO. Well, here's the problem, Nowhere. At the time, you didn't need a defensive tackle. At the time, you had Fletcher Cox, you had Timmy Jernigan. The next year, you signed Javon Hargrave and Malik Jackson next couple of years. You didn't need Jonathan Allen. You needed a defensive end. That's why you picked Derek Barnett. And there's a lot of conversation that Derek Barnett was a quote-unquote Joe Douglas pick. Like Donald Pumphrey was considered a Joe Douglas pick. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But at the end of the day, Jonathan Allen, the situation, that was something that was outside of the Eagles' control. You can't just load up on position just because. There's this idea that you should always pick best player available. In my opinion, I don't know if best player available is always the best idea because you don't want to logjam at a position and certain guys never get a chance to play. Uh, Jeff Bonabuki. J.J. Watt is a machine. That dude ain't human. He is incredible. The Joe Show chimes in. What's up, Joe Show? Says, I love everything Howie's doing. Now he needs to prove himself to the fans in the draft. I mean, I don't know if I love everything Howie's doing, but I do agree with you. He does have to prove something in the draft. Joe Show goes on to say, I was really hoping the Eagles would get Devonta Smith. I don't think that will happen now. Who the heck would we get at 12? Well, I mentioned earlier, maybe Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons, J.C. Horn, Caleb Farley, although I personally don't want Caleb Farley because he's coming off of some back injuries. The Eagles don't need any more injuries. I understand Ian Craig is like the Eagles would most likely not draft Farley. I agree. But it's not because it makes too much sense. Ian, it's because he's got injury history. We don't need any more injury guys. This organization can't stay healthy. It's ridiculous. Farley scares me. Back surgery, sitting out for a year, it scares me. I would rather pass on a guy that I don't feel comfortable with than go after a guy that I'm not comfortable with. That's just how I look at it. We got a comment over here at 609-403. I asked the question earlier, if the Eagles end up with Patrick Surtain and Asante Samuel, is trading down worth it? Andrew in Delaware at 609-403-0973 says, hey, Josh, I would absolutely love if Asante Samuel Jr. and Patrick Surtain were the first two picks. And that's what I mean. If the Eagles traded down and they ended up with that caliber of player, I don't think we're all too worried about it, right? We're not as frustrated with the Eagles as we might be right now. Because, again, we were sold for so long on this idea that Pitts, Chase, Smith, wide receivers, that now they trade down, and it's like, all right, now what? So it's one of those deals. Again, the Eagles trade from 6 to 12. They get the 12th pick in this year's draft. They move up to 123 from 156 in the draft. They also get a first-round pick next year. A couple more comments on. There's so many comments from you guys. I gotta pick up and let. Bruce on YouTube says the Eagles' best picks have been at 12. Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. Now that is true, but what do those two guys have in common? They're both defensive players. That's why I keep thinking this might be corner. I really do, because when you drafted Brandon Graham, you desperately needed a pass rusher. When you drafted Fletcher Cox, you desperately needed defensive line. So I do think that there is something said for this could be defense. And remember, Jonathan Gannon, your new defensive coordinator, his background with the Vikings and the Colts, he was a defensive backs coach. So if his background is defensive backs, you have to think they're insisting on going after defense. At least that's my takeaway from this. One more comment in here. David, watching on Facebook, says, finally a move that I loved. Top 11 picks, 4 quarterbacks, possibly 5. Penei Sewell and maybe even Northwestern's offensive lineman. Pitts, maybe a quarterback and maybe a D lineman. Goal should be to get one of the top 3 wide receivers, and one of them will get there. And we will have another first-rounder next year, pick swaps in the 4th. This was a great deal for a team that is far away from one player away. Listen, if you end up with Jalen Waddle, this might be a win too. Okay, if you end up with Micah Parsons, if you end up with Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn, this could be a win on so many levels. I agree. I don't think this team is one player away. We act like this team is, the quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback on planet Earth. Patrick Mahomes went to the Super Bowl, had no one to block for him, and he looked like he couldn't do anything. One player cannot win everything for you. I don't care who the quarterback is. There's a reason why Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer have Super Bowl rings on their finger and Dan Marino doesn't. What if Zach Wilson gets drafted, he has a 20-year career and never wins Super Bowl because he's on some okay teams? Was that pick worth it? I don't know. By the way, Manny agrees with me. He thinks it's going to be defense. Now, he goes J.C. Horn or Micah Parsons. I don't know about J.C. Horn, though. Is J.C. Horn really a corner or is he a safety long-term? I got the feeling that guys like him and Samuel could eventually become safeties later on. They'll elongate their careers. Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN being brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. Yeah, Matt Blatt Nissan. All new. All right, let's take a break from the Eagles talk for a little bit, get into the Sixers. NBA trade deadline came and went yesterday. George Hill's the guy. No Kyle Lowry. You didn't use the trade exception. You still have that as an asset for the offseason. All that and more. Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers next here on 97.3 ESPN FM. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Inside the Sixers, we talk Sixers every day here on 97.3 ESPN. Our Sixers coverage being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. Joining us right now on the Boardwalk Kinda Hotline, it is Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider over at 97.3 ESPN.com. As the NBA trade deadline comes and goes, and Kyle Lowry is not a Sixer, but George Hill is. So, Paul, how much of a surprise was it to you that Lowry stayed with the Raptors?
Pretty big surprise. I especially all the smoke not even just yesterday. I mean, yesterday obviously it reached a fever pitch, but beyond that, I mean, for like the last month or so, we've kind of heard it was kind of this will they, won't they thing, and then as it gets closer, the Raptors keep kind of losing. I know there were some extenuating circumstances for them with some of the things they've gone through recently. Then you see Norman Powell get traded. You see the Raptors making moves to clear roster space, and you're like, okay, this looks like it's going to happen. The Sixers are in, then they're out, then they're in, then they make the trade for Hill, then they're out, then they're in. It kept going back and forth. But I'm surprised. I don't know if anyone, if you saw Masai Ujiri, the Raptors president, his comments, basically it sounds like they overvalued him and he knew they overvalued him. And that's why it seems like a deal ultimately didn't get done.
Well, the deal that did get done, and you wrote about it over at 97.3 ESPN. Daryl Morey now has optionality, as you call it, now in the future after the George Hill trade. Let's talk about George Hill real quick. This is a guy who's played in the league for a while, pretty good outside shooter, veteran point guard. In my opinion, this stabilizes the bench a lot.
Oh, 100%. And when we talk, the optionality word is one that Daryl used, I don't know, like 10 times when he talked to us last night. And it's a word that his protege, Sam Hinkie, liked to use an awful lot too. And, what I wrote in that article is basically the idea of, optionality now and then optionality later. And by optionality now, I just mean George Hill can do a lot of things. As you mentioned, he can shoot the basketball. He handles the basketball well. He makes good decisions. He does not turn the ball over. He is a strong defender on and off the ball. He's smart. He's got veteran savvy. You're adding a guy who can just kind of do a little bit of everything and who's been in these high pressure, big situations in playoff games. You can't, understate that. You can't undervalue that. That's a real thing. And, having a guy like him, it just gives you this to me. And I think Doc really strongly indicated this is he's going to come off the bench. They're going to keep the starting five as is. And I think that's the right move. Starting five has played well. Keep it as it is. But when you close games now, if Seth Curry is getting hurt in a defensive matchup, well, we can go to George Hill and close the game with him. If Danny Green is having an ineffective shooting night, well, we can go to George Hill because maybe he's got a little something going. And then so on and so, or you go to Mitzi Steibel or you go to Shake Milton. There's just the amount of options and the way this lengthens the roster where you have a playoff-proven player. And listen, yeah, he's not Kyle Lowry. He's not a star. He's not an all-star. He's not going to come in and kind of can change the complexion of the team, but he makes the team better. To be able to throw a guy like that in a game for 20 minutes a night, maybe in the playoffs, and to have him be able to close games with the versatility he has, with his ability to shoot the basketball, with his ability to defend and not turn the ball over. It's not it's not the sexiest trade in the world, but it's one that makes them a better team. And I think you'll see it in the playoffs that he will make them a better team. And I bet the Milwaukee Bucks, who had him the last 2 years, they would love to have him right now, I bet.
Yeah, a couple of things you said. That number one, you mentioned getting a team better. I was looking at Bobby Marks a couple of days ago on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. He said, listen, if you have a chance to get better, you always should take that option. And the other thing is, you mentioned about it's not the sexy pick. I mentioned this the other day. People get so enamored with the flashy thing. They get so enamored. It's like, what's the car on the cover of Motor Trend? It's the Lamborghini, right? It's the flashy car. But people don't talk about how expensive it is to maintain that Lamborghini. Or if you see a car pull up, like when I was younger, to Atco Raceway, when you see the cars pull up. The fancy moped, the Honda Civic, has got all the tricks and gadgets on it. Everyone freaks out about it. Then you get the plain car with the Hemi in it, and that blows it away on the track. It's got about 150 more horsepower. Give me quality over the flash. That's how I look at it. I need quality because guess what? Flashy doesn't always win championships. Dominique Wilkins, great dunker, never won a ring.
Yeah, I mean, it's about price. Like everyone's got to have their walking away point. You can't sell the farm for everything. And I think that's what Daryl Morey has done here is he's made the team better with George Hill. He didn't meet the Raptors' asking price. And guess what? Daryl Morey's not the only one who didn't meet the Raptors' asking price. Pat Riley and the Heat didn't want to meet the Raptors' asking price, nor did Rob Pelinka and the Lakers. They did not want to meet the Raptors' asking price. So this isn't a situation where Morey got outbid and someone else got him. No, the Raptors chose to hang on to him. So, and again, Masai Ujiri himself admitted we value Kyle Lowry more than others because of what he means to our franchise. And I get that. But that's why it didn't happen. It's not a situation where Morey couldn't make the trade happen. And when you look around the league, there was no other, what other move could the Sixers have made? Because Kyle Lowry was not, would Oladipo really have made? I don't know what Oladipo is right now. I really don't. Maybe he goes to Miami and he refines himself and he's great and he helps the Heat out a lot. But I don't know that. I don't know that he's going to be that guy. And to do that, you would have had to given up in a contract. You likely would have had to given up Danny Green. And with the way that guy's playing right now, I don't know that that's a good trade. With this, you keep your roster intact for the most part. Yet Tony Bradley stings a little bit, but the reality of Tony Bradley is he's a third-string center once Joel Embiid is healthy. And I don't know, the ability to make the trade you made and not give up a rotational player is huge. You're only adding to your depth. Kyle Lowry would have made them better, hands down. But you would have lost Danny Green. You would have lost Tyrese Maxey probably. You might have lost Matisse Thybulle. And though it's all a factor. And then also, Josh, I think what some people got to look at too, when you're talking about young players and maybe some teams not wanting to give up young players, this isn't baseball where you trade Kyle Drabeck and Travis d'Arnaud for Roy Halladay because you don't know what those guys are going to be, and then they ultimately don't pan out to what you think they're going to be. Tyrese Maxey has scored 39 points in an NBA game already. Matisse Thybulle is in your rotation. He is an okay jump shot away from being an NBA starter. Isaiah Joe has had his moments this year, and he could be in the rotation as early as next year. You see what Paul Reed has done as the G League MVP, and he was good last night. These aren't projections 5 years from now. These are guys that can help you in the foreseeable future. They are young and they are cheap. So you don't want to be in a hurry to trade guys like that. So I think it's all a factor. And yeah, the price tag matters. You don't just, you have to have a walking away point. And I think Daryl Morey had his, and I think the Sixers are a better team. They didn't get a quote unquote difference maker, but they got a pretty damn good player, and they are better today than they were 2 days ago.
Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider for 97.3 ESPN.com, joining us for Inside the Sixers here on 97.3 ESPN. His latest article talking about Daryl Morey's optionality moving forward right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. George Hill is the man the Sixers walk out of the trade deadline with. Now, moving forward for the Sixers, and a lot of people have questions about the buyout market. I felt like every other question I got from about 3:30 to 5:30 yesterday was, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? So, according to most reports, it looks like that LaMarcus Aldridge is going to the Heat, okay? I'm hearing a lot of stuff that Andre Drummond, he's probably going to maybe the Lakers, I guess. But one question I get asked a lot, Boogie Cousins. If I had $1 for every Boogie Cousins question we got asked yesterday, I probably could have gone to a movie and gotten a popcorn and a soda and still had some change left over. So is Boogie Cousins a legitimate option? And if he's not, who are some legitimate buyout options for the Sixers?
Well, I want to start this by saying there was a weird situation that was kind of developing before I got on with you, where Mason Jones, who was a player that was on Houston this year, and they waived him, and he apparently tweeted out that he was joining the Sixers, and then quickly deleted the tweet. So I don't know the situation there. I don't know if that's a 10-day contract situation. I don't know if they're waiving someone else in order to sign him. I don't know what that's about, but it appears that Mason Jones will be a Sixer. If he is not taking up that last open roster spot, if there's another move to be made, and Daryl Morey kind of hit it at possibly a big being the guy that they would look at. Boogie Cousins, listen, as a third string center, like why not, I guess. He can't move anymore, flat out. He cannot move defensively, but he can shoot the basketball pretty well. He's a pretty good passer for a big man. In a pinch, you could dump it to him in the post. He's still got touch around the rim. Does he want to come here and be a third string center and maybe chase a ring? Possibly. He could get some minutes down the stretch here with, Joel Embiid, depending on his health and how much they kind of have him in and out of the lineup. He might get some run here and there. I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't love it. I'm kind of neutral about it. The guy if we're talking big men, the guy I like is Georgie Jiang, who I know a lot of people probably like who, but he plays for the Memphis Grizzlies. 31-year-old center, pretty good defensive player. The only reason he's not playing for Memphis is they're young. They want to stay young. They have a draft pick in Xavier Tillman they really like. They have Brandon Clark who they really like. They're going to get Jaren Jackson back in the next month or so. So they want to see what those guys have. So they don't want to play a 31-year-old center. So if he gets bought out, he's a decent defender. Like I said, is per 36 minutes, over a block and a steal per game. He can shoot it a little bit. I think he's over 40% this year from three. So again, we're talking about a third string guy who maybe brings something a little different than maybe a Dwight Howard does, where he's a little bit more mobile and can step out and hit a three. That would be a guy that would maybe interest me. If we're talking perimeter players, Avery Bradley's a guy I like if he gets bought out. Listen, he's not what he once was, but he's still a good defender. He's tough. He's got, again, playoff experience. You need all the help on the perimeter you can get when you're facing a team like the Nets in a possible 7-game series. So he's a guy I wouldn't mind having as kind of an insurance policy veteran perimeter guard defender. So that's what I would be looking at. But yeah, apparently Mason Jones, that would be a name that you're going to have to look at because he appears to be on his way to the Sixers one way or another.
I'm literally, while you were talking, trying to look up Gorgie Jang's name. And I realized that I have no idea how to spell his name until I actually have the Basketball Reference. He's the guy. He is the guy from Louisville. I was going to figure out trying the guy from Louisville, but then I realized I have no idea how to spell his name. So that was an interesting experience I had there for a bit.
It's like Grogui, and then his last name is Dieng. Does that sound right? Feel good?
You nailed it. You got 10 for 10 there on the scoreboard, man.
It's too much time spent on this stuff, Josh. That's all that is.
That's okay. Listen, we all have things that we dive a little bit too far into, so it's all good. All right, you got Gorgie Jang locked down, and I remember who played for Alabama 10 years ago in football. So it's all good. It's what we do. Paul Hudrick joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. A couple quick things after that. Last night, weird game. Okay, Dwight Howard kicked out of the game, which I thought was frivolous in my opinion. All these technicals, Sixers basically found every way to lose the game until they found ways to win the game. And I guess we just need to give Danny Green a ring every night because he gets his championship ring and he goes, 8 for 12 from 3 last year? And he said last night that he's still waiting for his Raptors ring. Hey, Raptors, can we get that ring like game 1 of a playoff series? So he just goes off in that game or something. I mean, it was nuts.
Not bad. Yeah, no, to me, he looked like a guy who, as much as he is a veteran, he's been through this. He's changed teams before. He's gone through all this stuff in his career. He looked like a guy who definitely had a little bit of weight lifted off his shoulders last night. I think that's definitely fair to say, knowing that he's still going to be here and he gets to see this season through. Going up against your former team, that's never a bad thing, especially with what he kind of incurred last year with the Lakers. If people don't know how bad that kind of ended for him there, it was kind of ugly with the fan base there at the end. And some people taking sports just far too seriously. I know we all love sports, but some people going a little bit off the deep end there. But yeah, I mean, he's been good since the break, Josh. I mean, he really has been. On both ends of the floor, his shot is falling. You're seeing defensively his value, what he adds. The break, I guess, did him some good. Maybe he got his legs fresh. He's really only had like one bad shooting game since the break. He's been really good overall. And that's when you talk about, again, just not to belabor it, but when we talk about a possible Kyle Lowry trade, if it would have cost you Danny Green and Matisse Thybulle, you would have been in a lot of trouble defensively. How are you going to replace those two guys? That's literally your second and your third best perimeter defender. You can't. That's not something you easily replace. For me, Danny Green, the only way I was trading him was in a Kyle Lowry deal. There was really no other deal I saw where I would have been comfortable including him. He's been again excellent since the break. He was great last night. They do not win without him. But the fourth quarter, it was just, I thought they just kind of took their foot off the gas after they really dominated the third. And it happens. It's a long season. They're on the road in LA. Trade deadline. It was probably a really long day for a lot of guys. They lose to, a couple of their teammates that I'm sure they've gotten close to. Some of their names might have been in trade rumors. So it's a long day for guys. I just think it's a result of they took their foot off the gas for a little bit. The Lakers went on a run. But ultimately, they win the game. And that's really, Josh, all that matters.
That is true. Absolutely. So now moving forward, do we have any idea of when Joel Embiid will come back? I feel like that's the thing that's kind of gotten forgotten about in all this, because you mentioned that starting lineup, they are incredible when all five are together, but there's one guy missing right now, and that's that guy Embiid.
Yeah, and Josh, just real quick, I mean, how good they've been without him. Oh, my goodness. It's the best stretch since, a couple years ago during Ben Simmons' rookie year when they won 17 games in a row and Joel Embiid got hit in the face by Markelle Fultz and missed a bunch of time. It's the best they've played without him since then. It's been a really nice run. As far as where he is right now, I'll look at my phone right now. I see nothing. So we're still waiting on an update. Today was, I believe, 2 weeks from which he was supposed to be reevaluated. So we'll see. I would say I would doubt you're going to see him tomorrow. I would in LA against the Clippers. I doubt you would see him Tuesday in Denver. He's not with the team right now. He's back. He's home getting treatment. Maybe next Thursday against the Cavs. That would put him closer to 3 weeks, and they would be at home at that point. So that might be the game that maybe they target. We'll see. Hopefully we get some info today, and hopefully he gets upgraded. But it's so far so good. It seems like everything's in a weird way, Josh. I think no news is good news. The fact that we haven't heard about any kind of setbacks or anything like that seems good. So that's what I'm going to go with for now. And if I hear anything, I will certainly send that out on the Twitter sphere for you guys to find.
That's at Paul Hudrick on Twitter, our Sixers Insider over at 973ESP.com. He has his latest article about Daryl Morey's optionality moving forward inside the Sixers. He'll be back on Monday with Mike Gill. And, of course, don't forget, coming in for a landing is the podcast. I love the conversation with you and Zumoff on that pod. That was a great episode there. Great content there. But before I let you go, one thing you and I have in common that nobody else here has in common, and that is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, first of all, my other podcast, Mutant Blitz Podcast, shameless plug, I did a full review on there. But I feel like I want to ask you real quick, because I know you're a huge Batman guy. I thought that I appreciated Zack Snyder's vision being fleshed out. That was kind of like my big takeaway. Yeah, it's really long. It's 4 hours. But I want to know what your thoughts are, because I know that you're really big into that stuff like I am.
So I have to admit off the top, I didn't finish it.
Okay.
I just haven't had a chance, flat out. It's 4 hours long.
Right. Now, are you going part by part? Is that how you're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. So I'm literally, I think I'm in the last chapter right now.
Okay.
Which is the long, I believe. So I still got an hour to go. But I think that's a good point, dude. Zack Snyder being able to see his vision, it's just so much less hokey. So I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying that there was no cyborg development in the first one, in the initial one, and now there's tons of cyborg development. I like that there's not as much. We already know a Wonder Woman story. We already know Batman story. We already know Superman story. Let's get the other guys some love here, and let's let them get a little bit of an origin here. So I liked that. But yeah, I mean, it's clearly better. Zack Snyder's, I think, if he got the chance, would have been so much better. I'm anxious to watch the rest of it, but Yeah, I'm a much bigger fan of this version than the previous one for sure.
All right, well, do me a favor because I know you're a very busy guy, but whenever you do finish it, hit me up. Let me know what you think of the rest of it because I think there's a specific moment that you haven't seen yet that I think is a huge deal with the movie. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
I think I know what you're talking about, and I'm already anticipating it and excited for it. I think I know what you're talking about.
Because and this was the thing I wasn't expecting. This was a moment that I knew about some of them because obviously Zack Snyder has put half the movie on Twitter, it seems like. But this was one scene that I didn't expect to see, and I was pleasantly surprised. So I'm looking forward to your full feedback when you're finished watching, okay?
Sounds great, man. I will do that. As soon as I finish it up, I will be you'll be one of the first text messages that I send out.
All right, sounds good. He's Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick on Twitter, host of Coming In for a Landing podcast. As all guests, he appear on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Paul, have a good weekend.
You as well, man. Thank you.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN in our Sixers coverage here on 97.3 ESPN, being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. We'll get back to your messages, 609-403-0973, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We have a line of messages to get to with all you guys coming up here on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, coming up, top of the hour, football at 4, NFL Insider, host of the Inside the Birds podcast, Adam Caplan, with the latest as the Eagles move from 6th to 12th in the NFL draft. We'll get his perspective and all of the things going on around that coming up here in less than 16 minutes from now on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill, TGIF Friday on 97.3 ESPN. Adam Caplan, NFL Insider, top of the hour. UFC Fighter Sean O'Malley at 4:40 p.m. Happy hour at the PT at 5:20 p.m. Got a lot to get to, just a little time to get to it all. And, of course, your guys' thoughts and comments, a lot to get to. Again, the big Eagles news. The Eagles go from 6th overall to 12th overall in the NFL draft. I asked you guys earlier, how do you feel about the trade? What if they end up with Patrick Surtain and Asante Samuel or Jalen Waddle or Micah Parsons? There's a lot of options they got. Let's get to some of your guys' comments as you guys are watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. A lot of different comments here. I want to get to some of you guys as best as possible. A lot of you guys have comments on here. Dave chimed in on Facebook a little bit earlier. He says, 12 pick could be Parsons after his workout. Waddle will be there. We need a wide receiver if we're going to give Hurts a fair chance to succeed. Got to see what we have in him. Now, you can also get a wide receiver in the second round. Listen, if you walk away with Patrick Surtain in the first round and a quality wide receiver in the second, you still have something good working there. So I'm definitely not going to dismiss that at all. A couple more comments. People are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, TJ, I'm not going to pull up your message, TJ, because I understand you were trying a text at 609-403-0973. I don't know what 8900 is. It sounds like a hotline number. Jeff Bonin Pookie says, I wouldn't mind if we don't get a receiver. We have Ward, Rager, Fulgham. We need somebody to complement Slay. Listen, I'm a big believer in having a complete football team. And if this team ever wants to win a championship in the next few years again, they got to have a full football team, not just one or two positions. So I would love to see them get some help when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. A couple more messages here to get to as you guys are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Let's see here. David chimes in, says, if by any chance the Eagles are set on drafting for defense in the first round, then I like the idea of them trading back again. If Alabama quarterback happens to be still there, they might be able to get even more picks and one of the top corners, even Parsons. Yeah, I think you got to watch about the Mac Jones situation. Apparently, there are some teams that are way higher than him than others. Like, apparently, the Patriots and the Panthers, according to reports, are really, really high on him. So there's a possibility that this team might look at him and say, listen, can we get this guy? If the Eagles sitting at 12 and the team's desperate enough, maybe you can take advantage of the situation. I'm not saying it'd be draft day and could demand all your picks back like Kevin Costner did, but listen, you could see a situation where if you're the Patriots and you're sitting where you're sitting and Mac Jones is sitting there at 12, you would be stupid at the call of the Eagles and say, is there a possibility of us getting him? I definitely think that's a possibility. 609-403-0973 is the text. Get in the conversation. Also, you can comment on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So a texter asked a comment here. I want to get to it really quick. Texter said, explain why teams are buying out players. What is the benefit to them? So what happens with the buyout is the buyout does save the team a little bit of money short term, and then it gets their contract off the books long term. So there is a benefit to the teams buying a player out, and the benefit for the player is they get to go somewhere else. Basically, it's a mini form of free agency, okay? That's the reason why teams buy out players every year. Because, one, it gives the team a little bit of financial flexibility in terms of available cash. It gives the player an opportunity to go somewhere else. So it's kind of a win-win for both sides. But typically to get a buyout, what the player does is their agent figures out how much money they can get on the open market. So let's say you're a player that's making $10 million, right? You're making $10 million. Your agent says you can make about $4 million on the open market. So you agree to take just $6 million in the buyout. So the team that you left is going to save $4 million because you know you get the $4 million somewhere else. That's usually similar to how it works. Not literally, but that's the reason why buyouts happen in the NBA. And realistically, the only reason why there are buyouts in the NBA is because of the way the financial contracts are set up. All right, the way the financial contracts are set up, it puts them in a position to have that kind of player flexibility. All right, we got a lot to get to. 2 hours still to go. Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. UFC fighter Sean O'Malley fighting at UFC 260. And don't forget my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the weekend. I'll give you those as well today and tomorrow. I'll be on for an hour tomorrow for Sports Bash Saturday till the Flyers at 1 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN. The Flyers, Pete Thompson at 5:20. I wonder how frustrated PT is right now with the Flyers. He must be losing his mind. These Flyers are just really, really playing rough to watch. More Eagles talk next. Adam Caplan, 97.3 ESPN.
It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 on a very important day for the Philadelphia Eagles. Adam Caplan joins the Sports Batch each and every Friday. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill here on a TGIF Friday on 97.3 ESPN. As the Philadelphia Eagles, they made a trade. And it's not a trade I think a lot of people thought would actually happen maybe this soon. To get into that and more, joining us right now, as promised, Adam Caplan on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline. Adam, how you doing this Friday?
Josh, I'm good, man. Yeah, the Eagles shook it up a little bit, so the Niners, so the Dolphins, I'm liking it. I'm liking that they did this. I know fans want Pitts, and by the way, it's not a done deal that he's going to be gone by 12. But Eagles certainly did something that I thought might happen, and I agree with your assessment. I didn't think it would happen now, but as I learned with the Carson Wentz trade up in 2016, remember that trade with the Browns happened in March in 2016. I think people have forgotten about that.
So, Adam, give us a little bit of a background about why this deal went down so people have a better understanding of what's going on here.
Yeah, so, Josh, the word around the league is this is a little bit deeper first round. Every year, if you talk to general manager personnel or high-end personnel people, they'll tell you that each draft has either between 12 and 15 true first-round picks. Yes, 32 picks have to be made in the first round, but overall, this draft is actually a little bit deeper. It's probably 15 to 18 guys who you would legitimately say should be first-round picks, and after that, the rest of them should be second-round picks, but they're not because you have to use your first-round pick unless you trade it. Someone's going to make it. So the value, certainly here, the Eagles have good value. They're getting the extra first-rounder. By the way, it's Miami's first-rounder, which might be one in the 20s, but nevertheless, it's a first-round pick. They're going to have their own, and plus, as you know, they're going to have potentially the Colts first-round pick if Wentz plays 75% of the snaps, or play 70, and also they make the playoffs. So there's a very good chance if Carson Wentz stays healthy this season, they're going to have 3 first-round picks for 2022. And this, no matter what the Eagles might think, is a semi-rebuild. That's just the way it is. That's the way that teams look at it around the National Football League who grade their roster.
Now, with all that being said, Adam, a lot of people want to know, what does this, if it does mean anything about Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, well, now, barring a trade up, if a quarterback drops, he's going to be the starter this season. I mean, that's exactly what it tells me. That was my reaction when Jeff Mosher and I talked off the air right when the Eagles announced the trade. It helps solidify that because we're 5 weeks away, Josh. Okay, we're not 2 weeks away. We're not 1 week away. Nobody knows what any team's going to do other than what's going to happen at 1. And I'm almost certain Zach Wilson's going at 2. Where the Jets trade out or they make it, that Zach Wilson's going at number 2, almost certainly. After that, it's anybody's guess. Nobody knows. That's typically what it's like 5 weeks before the draft. A week to 2 weeks before the draft, I could probably tell you 8 out of the 10 first-round picks, where at least who they'll be. Where we may not get the right team, but we're going to tell you by value how the league sees it, and it's almost certain by then how the league sees it. But you got to get through injury situations. By the way, we had. How funny is it that the BYU Pro Day happens today, and these trades go down? It's just the timing is hilarious.
Oh, the timing is priceless. That's to say the least. Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Insider Birds Podcast. The next one will drop Monday morning with all the extra intel with Adam and Jeff Mosher at Inside the Birds Podcasting Network. Adam, now, you mentioned Jalen Hurts. Aside from this draft pick, one more question on the pick specifically. Do you think the Eagles are potentially leaning a certain way? I think a lot of people are throwing a lot of names out there. Do you think the Eagles might be leaning a certain way with this pick, or is it still up in the air?
No, if you were at 6, then it's a little bit easier to say that I could have given you 3 names, which they would almost certain to take. They now have 11 teams picking ahead of them instead of 2. So it makes it a little bit harder. Now, the great thing about being a 12 is it's within that really good value range. You're going to get a top corner. One of the top corners, I don't think J.C. Horn will be there based on the intel. That's Joe Horn's son, by the way, former NFL receiver for the Saints and other teams. He probably will be gone, but there's some other good corners. Surtain Jr. should be there, who absolutely has a chance to be a star corner, no doubt about it. Corner is a major need. The Eagles don't need 2 outside corners. They need 3 guys. The only outside corner they have on the roster who could play is Slay right now, so they have to add 3 outside corners. To me, that's the value right now would be that position, the cornerback position, and also Devontae Smith probably will be there at 12. Just a matter of where Jalen Waddle, and I don't think he'll make it. What I'm told around the league is Waddle's a higher regarded player right now than Smith.
Of course, this week the Eagles also grabbing headlines before today because they signed Joe Flacco to the team. Adam, I really like the pick. I think that Joe Flacco, he brings a lot to that quarterback room because to me last year when I'm watching the Eagles, Carson Wentz walks to the sideline. What is Nate Sudfeld going to say to him? Now, when Jalen Hurts walks to the sideline, he has Joe Flacco, who it seems like that guy's played in almost every iteration of the West Coast offense.
Yeah, so my understanding is, though they may or may not call it a West Coast offense, the route combinations, everything they do is West Coast. So if that's the case, Joe's played in it one way or the other. You're right. And I like your point. You see, this is the thing that fans don't understand, which is what quarterback coaches have told me over the years. it doesn't matter whether that Joe Flacco is going to mentor anyone. It's totally irrelevant. What he's there is to bring competition. What do I mean by that? In the room, you just said it. This guy's been a starter, right? He's been a starter since 2008, save for last season. He did start 4 games, but remember, he was coming off neck surgery, so he couldn't even compete against Sam Darnold because he was not cleared for training camp. He was only cleared in mid-September. So here's a guy at 35, 36 years old that's done it. He's been a Super Bowl MVP. He's won a Super Bowl. He's done that. Now at this point in his career, he may or may not be a starter, but he's done it, and he's super. I've known Joe and his family since 2007. He's super competitive. That room, talking to quarterback coaches, they love guys who are competitive, that have answers, who've done it before. And by the way, wait till you go to training camp. For those of us who are able to go, or you see highlights from training camp, or hopefully we'll have a preseason, Josh, wait till you see him throw the football. That's the thing with Joe Flacco. And assuming Jalen Hurts is the starter, I still believe he's going to be, that training camp will be very interesting between the two of them because Hurts, obviously, he's got a lot of pressure on him to be the guy for the future. And then Joe Flacco wants to get back to where he was. So this is going to be a fun training camp for those guys.
Joe Flacco said in his presser yesterday, Adam, he was very complimentary of the Eagles' offensive staff. He said that was part of the reason why he came here. Should we read anything into that?
Well, no, he had a very good meeting. I'm told the Eagles, it's interesting, Josh. They kind of slow played it last week with Flacco because, the Niners had him in for a visit. And it's interesting. So I don't know. If you would have asked me Monday what was going to happen, I would have said he probably was going to go to the Niners. But he would have that visit with the coaches later on. He was actually saw them, I'm told. He got in the building late Monday morning and had his visit with the coaches, and it went really well. And they kind of know what they're getting with Joe Flacco. And look, the Eagles have not had anyone who could throw the ball like this ever, really, quite frankly. Jaws had a good arm. Randall Cunningham had an absolute rifle, but this is elite when it comes to arm strength. People have that elite moniker with Flacco, which is comical, but it just made sense. And by the way, one of the reasons why they probably slow played it, Jacoby Brissett got $5 million last week, okay, for one season with incentives. Joe Flacco got less than that. He got $1.5 million. I put the terms out today. He gets just a little bit over $4 million incentives, which he doesn't get any of it unless he earns it. But he's going to get $3.5 million this season. That's actually low and backup. That's actually not the median number. It's a little bit lower than the median number now for veteran, very experienced quarterback. So I think people need to back off of thinking that's too much money. That's not correct.
Yeah, and as you pointed out on the Inside the Birds pod on Thursday morning that dropped, this ain't Chase Daniel money over here. This is bargain basement.
That was great. That's a great point by Jeff because that guy Chase Daniel. No offense to him, but he's got obviously a very good agent. He's made more money for doing less than maybe another former Eagle quarterback, Sam Bradford.
Adam Caplan joining us, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, the draft is 5 weeks away. So remaining positional needs, one of them is quarterback.
Yep.
I mean, Jalen Hurts, Joe Flacco, but maybe late in the draft they get a third guy?
Yeah, well, remember, right now, Josh, they've got 11 draft picks. You can't go to training camp with 2. You have to have at least 3, and Eagles have taken 4 many times before. So they'll add at least 1. And, yeah, you could get a mid-rounder. You can get anywhere from 3 to 5, if there's a guy that the coaches like. That's the way that they'll lean. They need a number 2 running back. Boston Scott is a change-up. He is not a number 2 running back. He's an excellent third back. He can handle a little bit of third down work, but he is a third NFL running back. They need a 2 with size. That's what they're going to be looking for. They need more receiver. They're going to draft a receiver, depending whether it's the first or second round. They're going to draft a receiver. After they trade Zach Ertz, they'll need 2 tight ends. They need developmental offensive linemen. They probably need 2 of them, a center and a guard. 2 defensive tackles. They need 1 to 2 DNs. They need 2 to 3 linebackers. They need a safety. As I said earlier, 3 outside cornerbacks.
And, of course, you mentioned they have 11 picks. Was it 2 in the 3rd round, 2 in the 5th round? The swap with the Dolphins obviously moves them up. So
yep.
I would assume to say it wouldn't be surprised if Howie moves around on draft day as well.
Sure. And I remember one thing I do want to mention about all these needs. I sat in John Lynch's office. He's the 49ers GM, I'm going to say 3 years ago. We were talking about roster building. He said, hey, I want to show you something. And he shows me this laminated card that says you cannot solve every issue in one offseason. And that is so apropos for the Eagles. They are a team that's in a semi-rebuild. They have a lot of needs, as I just outlined. They're 5 weeks away from the draft, Josh. As you said, they have 11 picks. They're in a position here to, if they keep them all. Now, I don't know that they will, but even if they only have 9 picks, if they can nail this draft and get 5 to 6 impact play. When I say impact, guys are going to wind up either starting, or at least 3 guys who start, and the rest are key backups over the years. Then in the end, they've done a very good job in this draft.
Adam, before we let you go, also the Eagles this week, they've lost a couple players to the free agency. Vinny Curry goes to the Jets. Jalen Mills goes to the Patriots. A couple staples of the defense for the last few years. Cam Johnson to the Texans. How do you believe the Eagles will fill some of those voids? Will it just be through the draft, or do we expect maybe some more movement in free agency as well?
Yeah, I would expect a free agent linebacker at some point, a free agent corner, and they're all going to have ties to Jonathan Gannon, whether they're from Minnesota or the Colts. That's going to happen. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen today or tomorrow or in a week, but by training camp, they all have added guys, because it all comes down to money, Josh. And the Eagles are very tight against the cap here. It's going to come down to money, but they're going to get they're going to add a DN at some point. They're going to add a linebacker, and they're going to add a corner, and then the rest will come in the draft. Now, guys are still out there. Nate Sudfeld, don't expect him back. Quinn Clement, don't expect him back. Josh Perkins, don't expect him back. These are guys who are free agents. He was non-tenor as a restricted free agent. Richard Rodgers, he did a good job last season. Jason Peters, don't tell Mosher this. No, I'm just kidding. He's not coming back. He gave it the business, man. People loved it. Nate Gary, who visited the Niners earlier this week. Now, both of their backup slot corners, actually, Nicole Roby-Coleman was technically a starting slot corner. He's unsigned, and Crayvon LeBlanc. One of those guys might return. They have to solve whether Avonte Maddox is going to be their slot corner this season. He should be. There's no reason why he shouldn't be. But that's something the new coaches will have to decide in the coming days and weeks.
He's Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Insider Podcast, at Caplan NFL for your Eagles and NFL coverage. The next edition of Inside the Birds with more detailed information this Monday, 6 a.m. Jeff Mosher, Adam Caplan. As all guests, Adam appeared here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Great stuff today, Adam.
Thank you.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash affiliate for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Football at 4 being brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelyle.back.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Our Eagles conversation today being brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelyle.back.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football for all Eagles talk here on 97.3 ESPN. Got a lot of feedback here, 609-403-0973. Get to your text in just a moment. Poll question I posted earlier at 973 ESPN. Gonna hit the refresh button on Twitter. Get you the latest results. Gonna pop that back up onto the stream. Latest update on the poll question at 973 ESPN. The Eagles select Patrick Surtain in the second, the first round. Asante Samuel in the second round. How do you feel about the Eagles? Was trading down worth it? Or should they have stayed at 6 overall? 53% say trading down was worth it. 46% say they should have stayed at 6 overall. Listen, it's one of those deals where I think it just comes down to where you stand. I think a lot of people have a lot of different varying opinions about what the Eagles should or shouldn't have done. I'm finding that some people are just really unhappy because of the fact that, look, it's one of those deals where people look at the Eagles and they have expectations. They have positive and negative. They think they can and can't do certain things. There's a perspective on that 6 overall pick. It seems like the perspective people had on that pick didn't match up with the Eagles' perspective on the draft is. We're not in those rooms. We're not talking with the scouts. We don't know all the details. So it's one of those deals that I think that it's a lot of conjecture, obviously. That's why I'm asking the questions that I am, because I'm I'm kind of trying to think outside the box for you guys because I think that this deal has certain signs to me. And one of those signs is you have a defensive coordinator who has a history when it comes to coaching defensive backs. You've already signed Anthony Harris, who he's worked with. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to Jonathan Gannon and be like, what makes sense for your defense? And when they hired Sirianni, it was, what do you want the defense to look like? And that's impacting what they're doing here. 609-403-0973 is the text. We'll also get to your comments on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as you watch the show at 973 ESPN. You want to watch the show, just go to 973ESPN.com and just click on Watch the Sports Bash. Of course, I'm Josh Hennig. Mike Gill will be back on Monday for the show. Couple comments coming on the text board so far. Texter chimes in and says, can a team tight to the cap like the Eagles sign a free agent for a veteran minimum 1 year, but fully guaranteed year 2 or future years for much more money since the cap situation will be more? The simple answer to that is yes, Texter, but I'm going to give now the slightly longer explanation. So there's a handful of ways you can structure contracts so that they don't affect the salary cap now. They affect it later. One of those ways is giving somebody a big signing bonus up front. Another way is to build all the guaranteed money into roster bonuses in years 2, 3, and 4. Another way you can do it is when they restructure contracts, they put what they call dummy years on there. So, for example, when Jalen Mills signed his contract, all that money was not guaranteed. It looked really big on the surface, but it wasn't all guaranteed money. Some of those years, it technically Jalen Mills, let me put it up here. Jalen Mills' deal is actually closer to a 1-year contract than is anything else. Here it is. So it's 4 years, $24 million, but it actually works as only 1 year guaranteed at 6.5. So if Jalen Mills doesn't play well enough, the Patriots only end up paying 6.5 of that $24 million. So yes, the Eagles, even though they are tight to the cap, they can sign guys on a 1 year deal with a second year that's avoidable, third year that's avoidable, where the money, it's basically you can either have a player option, you have a team option, you can have non-guaranteed money, you can have roster bonuses, you can have workout bonuses, you can have off-season bonuses, you can have different incentives built into the contract. The only thing that what happens is as soon as you guarantee money in a contract, you got to put that money into escrow. And then when that money goes into escrow, you got to pay that money no matter what. And that's the money that always goes against the cap. Everything else is negotiable. So that's why the Eagles can sign guys for contracts still, but they're going bargain basement hunting. They signed Joe Flacco, as Adam Caplan mentioned, for below market value. They are going to sign other guys for either at market or below market value because, let's be realistic, once the draft passes, you can get guys at a discount number. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Get a couple more of your texts here. Texter says, don't be surprised if the two corners are gone and the two wide receivers are gone and the Eagles take Mac Jones. Well, first of all, Texter, I'm not fully sure what reality you live in because the Eagles are not taking Mac Jones. The Eagles are not one of the teams linked to him. There's a lot of conversation out there as the Panthers and the Patriots who would have the most interest in Mac Jones. So it's not the Eagles. I've never seen any report anywhere at all the Eagles would have interest in Mac Jones. Also, it doesn't fit what they're doing with the offense here. And then you're assuming actually there's 3 cornerbacks. It's Caleb Farley, it's J.C. Horn, and it's Patrick Surtain. And I doubt all 3 of those guys will be gone. I'm going to make the assumption that the Cowboys will pick one of the 3 corners easily. I think that is pretty fair to say. I think the Giants, who are ahead of the Eagles, they won't pick a cornerback or receiver. They'll probably pick an offensive lineman. I'm assuming that you mentioned the 2 receivers. Well, there's way more than 2 receivers. There's Lamar Chase, there's Devonta Smith, there's Jalen Waddle. And then you have Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is probably going in the top 5. So he'll probably either go to the Falcons or to the Bengals. Jamar Chase will probably go somewhere between 3 and 8 in the draft. And then Waddle and Smith depends on how the rest of the draft falls. Where does Penei Sewell go? Where do the 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10? But no, they're not picking Mac Jones. Don't be silly. Again, I go based off of information I know. I don't go off of things that I just, make up off the top of my head. It's not my style. 609-403. Oh, and I have to get one more text in here before we hit everybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter watching the show at 973 ESPN. Wally from the Main Street Band. I haven't seen Wally text in for a while. It's good to hear from Wally texting in the 973 ESPN. Wally says, with 3 potential first-rounders in 2022, if Jalen Hurts is a complete failure, he gives the capital for the Eagles to move up and get a quarterback. That's 100% right. It gives the Eagles the ammunition. But it also, on the flip side, if Jalen Hurts plays well, now you're going into that first round, and you can use that same draft capital to trade up, maybe not for a quarterback. What if this year we find out that Jalen Hurts plays well, the offensive line gets healthy, and let's say you're not thrilled with, wide receiver, or maybe there's a superstar defensive end in the draft next year. I would have to look up who exactly are the 2022 NFL draft prospects. Let's pull up a list real quick here. First of all, you don't want to have these quarterbacks. I mean, Sam Howell's an interesting quarterback. Kevin Slobus, I think, is a little overrated. I think Bo Nix is overrated. Spencer Rattler's overrated. So the quarterbacks, I'm not loving the quarterbacks there in the 2022 NFL draft. What about some other positions? Garrett Wilson's a nice player. That's a wide receiver you can get potentially next year. Zach Harrison, good, not great defensive end. Christian Harris, the linebacker from Alabama, would be available next year. How about the brother of Malik Hooker, Marcus Hooker? What if the Eagles pick up Malik Hooker in free agency and then they go out and they draft Marcus Hooker next year? A little family reunion going on there. So there's some interesting players in the draft next year. Here's the guy I was looking for, Kayvon Thibodeau. Kayvon Thibodeau, I can almost guarantee you right now, is going to be a top 10 pick next year. This dude is an athletic freak. This dude is one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen play defensive end in college football. I was led on to him by Ian Fitzsimmons a couple years ago when he was a freshman at Oregon. This dude is a monster, 6'5", 250, and he's probably as athletic as Chandler Jones is. So, what if you're the Eagles and Jalen Hurts played great, the receivers played good, the offensive line's fine. We need defensive help. And Brandon Graham's getting older, and Derek Barnett, you just let him walk in free agency. And you use that draft capital, you trade up to get Thibodeau. I like that deal. I like that situation for sure. That is definitely an option for the Eagles to use that draft capital. Let's get one more comment in here. People watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Jeff Bone and Pookie says, I know we're going to make the world go crazy with our 12th pick. Listen, there's going to be 3 or 4 points in the first round where picks are going to totally change the direction of the draft. Once you get past the first 2 picks, that third pick by the 49ers is going to change everything from there. So that's the first linchpin. The second linchpin is the Dolphins at 6. The Dolphins trade up to 6 for a reason, like the 49ers trade up to 3rd for a reason. So you know that pick's going to change the distance of the entire draft. The next linchpin is the Cowboys. The Cowboys have very, very specific needs. They don't need quarterback. They don't need wide receiver. They don't need running back. Could they use offensive line help? Yes. Cornerback? Yes. Linebacker? Sure. So there's a few positions right there. What if the Cowboys take Micah Parsons? Or what if they take an offensive lineman? What if the Cowboys trade up to get Penei Sewell? How does that change the draft? There's a lot of ways this draft can play out. So, and then the Eagles at 12. The Eagles are a great unknown because no one's really 100% sure what is going on with the Eagles. And as Adam said, we won't know for sure until the draft actually plays out to know what's going to happen. All right. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 4 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. Coming up next, one of the fastest rising stars in the UFC, Sean O'Malley, joins us coming up on the other side right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Don't forget happy hour, the PT, tonight at 5:20.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN, UFC 260 Saturday night, ESPN Plus pay-per-view. And, of course, we get the return of Sugar Sean O'Malley back into the octagon. He's a part of the Miocic versus Ngannou 2 pay-per-view on Saturday night. Sean, how you doing today?
Doing good. Just had a little coffee, so I'm feeling good.
You know, man, listen, a lot of people have been looking forward to your return in there. Obviously, your last fight didn't go the way you wanted to. You talked about how you had a little drop foot from that, but you're better now. How's the training camp going, and how are you feeling going into this fight?
Yeah, the training camp was awesome. I got my results back today with COVID-free, so it was a little stressful knowing in the back of the head, seeing all these fights falling out. I just wanted to get to the fight. I wanted to, Thomas to get to the fight, get to the hotel, get COVID-free, and it was a little stressful just having that in the back of my mind. But other than that, the fight camp went great. Had awesome training camp. Everything went good.
You mentioned now it's been stressful having to wait for the test to come back and everything. How has that affected, your mentality as a fighter preparing for this? Because obviously this is a situation that no one could have foreseen or prepared for a year ago.
Yeah, I just would remind myself it's out of my control. If it happens, it happens. But it was still lingering in the back of your mind that, you could wake up and say, hey, the fight's off. So it was, this is my third fight in the COVID, the COVID bubble at the UFC Apex. So it's, I've done it a couple of times, which definitely helped. But I was just hoping Thomas wasn't walking around the airport trying to lick things, trying to get COVID. So, but we're good.
Sugar Sean O'Malley fighting on UFC 260 Saturday night. ESPN Plus pay-per-view is where you watch the fights. Sean, you're one of the big up-and-coming fighters in the UFC. A lot of people love watching you fight. But one of the things people might not know about you is that even though you have all these knockouts on your resume, you're a guy with a great grappling background. Talk about how being a well-rounded mixed martial artist has actually put you in a position to have the success that you had.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, we haven't really seen much of my grappling in the UFC much, but just the confidence knowing, because that was the biggest thing. Even when I got signed, my grappling wasn't where I wanted to be, but I really focused the last 4 years on doing straight jiu-jitsu, understanding jiu-jitsu, wearing a gi, training with Augusto Mendez, who's one of the best grapplers in the world in my weight class, and just kind of falling in love with jiu-jitsu and grappling in general. I hated wrestling. I didn't mind jiu-jitsu. I hated wrestling. Now wrestling practice, just grappling practice live from the feet is my favorite practice of the week. So just getting the confidence, and then competing at Quintet, I think it was 2019 or whatever it was, December, and choking out Takanori Gomi, going a live or a 8-minute match with Gilbert Melendez, grappling with these really good guys, and showing where my jiu-jitsu's at, showing me where my jiu-jitsu's at. Gives me confidence to go into the octagon and not be worried about, oh no, if I get taken down, I might get held down, I might lose by that. But now going into these fights, I'm like, I might choke this dude. I'd prefer to knock him out, but I very well could choke this guy. So yeah, it's my confidence at an all-time high.
Sean O'Malley joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. UFC 260 Saturday night, ESPN Plus pay-per-view where you can catch all the action. Sean, you've had some changes in your life over the last year. You now have a daughter. How has that changed your perspective as a fighter and on life? Because it really seemed like, you were, going into the fight game, you were rising, and now you have a daughter. And for a lot of guys, that kind of changes their perspective a little bit.
It's been good. I think, this time last year, I was coming off a win over Jose Quinones. It was a 2-year layoff. And Danny, my wife, had told me she was pregnant right before I fought Jose. So, her first trimester, I fought Jose. Her second trimester, I fought Eddie. Her third trimester, I fought Cheeto. And then a couple months later, Elena was born. So, it's been good. It's been a fun process. I've wanted kids since I was like 12. I remember breaking up with a girl in middle school because she didn't want to have kids. So it's been cool. Elena was definitely an accident, and then Danny just being the best mom ever. It's just so natural to her, and it's cool to see their connection. Learning a lot about breastfeeding and just watching that whole process has been so informative and awesome. It's really cool to see. So as far as, motivation to win, because I have a daughter, it's not, there's not more motivation. I wanted to win bad before I had a baby. Every single fight I get in there, I want to win. I'm a competitor, and that it hasn't changed. But my perspective on fighting, it's always been before a baby. I just want to take care of my brain. I want to be able to be healthy when I'm older. So my style is kind of, hit, not get hit. And that's how my style has been the whole time. And it's just, it's the same thing. But yeah, I definitely want to take care of my brain and be able to raise Elena.
Sean, let's give the folks a little bit of chance to get to know you a little bit more. Obviously, as a UFC fighter, people only know you for inside the octagon, but they might not know you outside. What's the story behind the hair? We got to understand the story behind the hair, man.
Yeah. I remember I wanted to do something crazy. This is an entertainment business, and I've understood that before I got into the UFC. I kind of thought about it that way before Conor, but when Conor got into the UFC, and I was like, damn, that is doing it right. He's blowing up. He's wearing this. He's saying that. He's different. So coming into the UFC, I always thought I was different anyway, just because my style of fighting. I'm a skinny dude, and I knock people out, and not just knock people out, like put them to sleep. So I knew I was different anyway, but I'm like, we need to enhance that. We need eyeballs, and the hair was one of them. And honestly, 6ix9ine the rapper kind of inspired me with the rainbow hair, and we did that. So this weekend we got, and Danny, my wife, does hair. She I like to say she's a black belt in hair. She's a professional, and so we go into the salon, we sit down, and she gets creative, and it's fun for her. Not so fun for me sitting in the chair for 4 or 5 hours, but the hairs just stand out. Let's be seen. I want to knock people out, and I want people to remember me. So that's kind of where we get that from.
Love it, man. Love it. All right, one more before I let you go. I know you got a busy schedule today. Sean, when you win the fight Saturday night, you're going to get back on your Twitch stream. You're going to get back into your gaming. You're a huge gamer. What's the first game you're going to play after you win Saturday night?
Yeah. It's been a long 8 weeks. I haven't been streaming nearly as much. I love gaming with the boys. I've actually met a lot of people, good friends that I flew some Twitch subscribers out to my house, sparred with them, hung out with them, brought them to the UFC fights before. So yeah, my Twitch community is huge, and haven't been able to stream nearly as much. But I'm definitely playing some Call of Duty Warzone, probably Resurgence. Right when we get back Monday, I'm gonna hop on with the boys.
Now, is that PS or is that Xbox?
I play on PC with an Xbox controller, so I'm kind of a lot of people don't like that. They're like, just play with the mouse and keyboard, but I've been playing with a controller since I was 4 years old, whether it was the Nintendo, the 64, the whatever it was. So it's I can't get away from the controller, but I play on PC.
Nice. That's Sean O'Malley, UFC on Twitch TV. He is Sugar Sean O'Malley, fighting UFC 260 Saturday night, ESPN Plus pay-per-view. One of the fastest rising stars in the UFC. And as all guests, he appeared here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Great stuff, Sean. Appreciate talking to you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And again, Sean O'Malley, UFC 260 tomorrow night. The headliner is Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou, too. Massive heavyweight fight on that card. And I always give you guys UFC picks every time there's UFC fights. I've been doing it since UFC came back last May. So just a couple updates. So Stipe Miocic is still an underdog on this card, and he is 3-0 as an underdog in UFC title fights. I feel like the only reason why Ngannou is a favorite is because there's a handful of people who just keep betting him every time he fights. Listen, Miocic beat him before. I think he beat him again. I think people are reading way too much into the weigh-in today that Ngannou came in just ripped and shredded, and Miocic came in about 8 pounds lighter than the last time he fought Ngannou. I don't think the weight is going to have too much to do with it because Miocic's speed comes from him not being a bulky heavyweight. Ngannou is just a naturally large guy when it comes to strength and muscle. So Ngannou weighing more and looking ripped and shredded doesn't mean much in the fight if Miocic just takes him down and or knocks him out or whatever happens. Miocic, he's the better, well-rounded fighter. Ngannou he's a flash knockout guy. He's a guy who blasts people and dominates. Miocic is a guy he can strike, he can grapple, he can do a little bit of everything. So I always give you guys some picks. I think Miocic wins this fight, and O'Malley's definitely going to win his fight. Almeida's lost 3 straight, and 3 of his last 4 losses that he has, 2 of his last 4 losses have been by TKO or knockout. So if you take Sean O'Malley, you combine him with Stipe Miocic over on FanDuel Sportsbook. You set up, use promo code Hennig on FanDuel Sportsbook. That's plus 168 odds for Miocic and for O'Malley parlay. So $10 will net you 26 on the back end. So good opportunity for you to maybe make a little bit of money on this card. Some very interesting fights on the card. It's not the greatest fight card in the world, but it's a card that, definitely has more depth than people realize, even with the Ortega-Volkanovski fight no longer on. For those who don't know, Volkanovski and Ortega are supposed to fight for the featherweight title, but they had to be pulled off because if Volkanovski tested positive for COVID, according to UFC COVID protocols, you're off the card immediately. It doesn't matter if it's a false positive or anything. So Volkanovski is very upset. Ortega is frustrated, but that's the protocol. So your new co-main event is Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque. And Tyron Woodley is a plus 210 underdog. This is another situation where I don't understand why he's that much of an underdog. I understand that Woodley, he's on the back end of his career. He's not the dominant powerhouse that he used to be. I get it. He's lost 3 straight, but he's not being dominated on 3. I mean, outside of the TKO loss to Kobe Covington last year, the Gilbert Burns fight, that was a decision loss. Kamaru Usman, when he lost his belt, that was a decision loss. This is a very, very good fighter in Tyron Woodley. And no offense to Vicente Luque, but Luque is a good but not great fighter. Luque himself he won 2 straight fights, but he's beaten guys like Randy Brown and Nico Price. He lost to Stephen Thompson by decision. I think Woodley wins this fight. That's good odds. Plus 210. Those are some picks for you on the UFC 260 tomorrow. I also think that Kama Worthy is going to win his fight as well. All right, Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Happy hour of the PT coming up on the other side at 5:20 tonight. Also get more of your reaction to the Eagles trading down from 6th to 12th overall. Poll question at 97.3 ESPN on Twitter. 5 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN, TJF Friday edition of the Sports Bash. 5 o'clock hour of the show being brought to you by Dorothy Gale Roofing. There's no place like your home, and if you have a leak or need a new roof, call Dorothy Gale Roofing at 877-97-KEVIN or visit them online at DorothyGaleRoofing.com. Happy hour at the PT coming up 18 minutes from now. We've been getting your reaction all day long, all show long on the big news that hit right before we came on the radio at 2 p.m. today. Eagles trading from 6th to 12th in the draft. A lot of reaction from you guys out there. A lot of people are looking at it as a good move. The Eagles got more assets. People say it's a bad move. You're going to miss out on Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts. What do you think? 609-403-0973 is the text board. We are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show at 973 ESPN. Remember, you can go to 973ESPN.com, click the link, watch the Sports Bash, to watch the Sports Bash Live each and every day. Mike Gill will be back in here coming up on Monday. No game night tonight. I'm here from 2 to 6. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 12 after Billy Schwein in the locker room. Billy's from 10 a.m. to noon. I will be on at noon until Flyers hockey at 1 p.m. That's coming up on 97.3 ESPN. I mentioned the question earlier. I asked the poll question at 973 ESPN earlier today. And I asked, listen, people are talking a lot about what do they do at 12th overall. There's a lot of conjecture that Patrick Surtain will be there at 12th overall. So I ask you, poll question at 973 ESPN. Hey, Eagle fans, if the Eagles select Patrick Surtain II in the first round at 12th overall, and then the second round they get Asante Samuel Jr., how do you feel? Was trading down worth it, or should they stay at 6 overall? Well, right now, 55.8% say trading down was worth it. 44% say it should have stayed at 6 overall. Keep the votes coming in at 973 ESPN on Twitter. It's kind of a split issue. Some people are really on board with them trading down. Some people are totally against it. And I'm just saying, one of the scenarios could be you walk out of here with 2 bona fide cornerbacks in the draft. And I think that if they did that, that would be a great move for them. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Text came in here earlier. If I can click the right button, might help. Here we go. John from Cape May says, I love the trade. I love what it gives the Eagles for the future. I like them now to move up in front of the Giants and the Cowgirls, though. Now, John, I don't know if that's possible because I don't know if you have the trade assets to jump up because you would. There's, all right, a couple things. One, when it comes to the draft capital you have to move back up, you would have to give up the Dolphins pick from next year. To me, I wouldn't trade that pick. I want all 3 of those potential picks in the first round. I know the one pick could be conveyed. That's from the Wentz deal. It's a second-round pick that could turn into a first-round pick if Wentz plays 75% of the games next year, this upcoming year for the Colts. I don't want to trade that pick. I think the Eagles should just stay at 12 unless they can find a way to maybe trade a player with that pick and move up. Because for me, I think that a texter mentioned this earlier. I think it's an excellent point. This draft got really thrown for a curveball because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic caused all these college football games to just go away and disappear. And a lot of guys opted out. So there's a lot of guys who are going to play this year in 2021 who are going to benefit greatly from a regular schedule. And I think that having 3 first-round picks next year is valuable. But, hey, if the Eagles move back in front of the Cowboys and the Giants, that's fine. I'm not against it, that's for sure. Albert Breer mentions on Twitter that a very interesting point about the Eagles in this draft pick, okay? You know, we keep talking about what is the situation. Well, I'm going to pop it up here on the screen as you watch on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and I'll read it for all of you listening here on 97.3 ESPN FM. So Albert Breer turns around and says the Eagles hadn't thrown away their Week 17 game against Washington and found a way to win, they would have had the 9th pick rather than the 6th pick. Albert Breer goes on to say, I feel comfortable saying the Dolphins wouldn't turn over a 2022 first-round pick to go from 12 to 9. So people didn't like what the Eagles did the last week of the season, pulling Jalen Hurts, putting in Nate Sudfeld. But Albert Breer is pointing out, listen, if you would have won that game, which the Eagles were in prime position to potentially win that game, they were not out of it, to say the least, until Sudfeld came in and just imploded. There's no way you're getting that first-round pick from the Dolphins. So that in and of itself is a win for the Eagles, that they get another first-round pick next year. And there's no guarantee the Dolphins are going to be some elite team. They lost some players in free agency. They added some others. I think the Dolphins' offense might be better next year, but will their defense be better? I don't know. Their defense might take a step back, I think, this year. Just because it's just the way the league is going to play out. So Very interesting point from NFL insider Albert Beer from SI to add to the conversation. Again, the text board is open, 609-403-0973. Again, the Eagles moving down from 6 to 12 in a trade where the Dolphins get the 6th pick. The 12th pick is technically from the 49ers. The 49ers get the Dolphins pick, which was 3rd overall, which actually the Dolphins got from the Texans in the Laramie Tunsil trade. So, a lot to remember. Keep that in mind. A lot of moving parts. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973 to get in on the conversation. Also, for all you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can chime in as well on the stream. Tom in the Villas chimes in on the text board. Says, I'm not a fan of the trade. The Dolphins are on the verge of being a good team. That Dolphins pick next year can wind up being in the mid-20s. That's from Tom in the Villas. You're right, but you're also going to walk in there with 3 first-round picks next year. And having all that ammunition could get you back up into a better spot in the draft. So if you're the Eagles, just to use an analogy, just a scenario for you. Not analogy, a scenario. Let's say the Dolphins pick is 25th. And the Eagles pick is 15th. And the Colts pick that conveys is 26. You could take those 2 in the 21st round picks with your first round pick and move up to 10th or higher in the draft. You could find a team that's high in the draft that needs a ton of players. If you don't want to use 3 first-round picks, which you could keep all 3 first-round picks and just be like, hey, we're just going to load up on talent. Because getting a first-round pick, people act, okay. Now, I'm not saying Tom from the Villas is this guy, but a lot of people have this misconception about the NFL draft. All right? They have this idea that it's like the NBA draft, and the furthest could be from the truth. You can get talent in any round, at any tier in the NFL draft. People talk so much about Justin Jefferson. He was a 22nd pick. Brandon Ayuk had a very good year for the 49ers, a 25th pick in the draft. Patrick Queen had a very good year for the Ravens, 28th pick in the draft. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the final pick of the first round, 32nd. Let's go 2 years ago, 2018, the year the Eagles didn't have a first-round pick. The picks in the 20s that year. All right? That year, it includes DJ Moore, who had a very nice career down with the Panthers. Hayden Hurst. Then he is a guy that the Ravens had, and they traded him and got draft assets for him, and now he's the starting tight end for the Ravens. Calvin Ridley, pretty darn good number 2 receiver down there in Atlanta as well. Also, think about the fact that they drafted in that draft 30th overall by the Vikings, Mike Hughes. Starting high-caliber cornerback. And, by the way, 32nd pick of the 2018 draft, some guy who won the league MVP named Lamar Jackson. So don't be so negative about a pick being in the 20s. You can still get high-quality talent in the 20s. I can go to any draft that you think of, and I can tell you guys who were drafted in the 20s who are quality players. Hell, let's go to 2010. The 2010 NFL draft. I said random draft, right? Here's a list of guys who were picked in the 20s that year. Demaryius Thomas, Dez Bryant, Brian Bulaga, 3 Pro Bowlers. Devin McCourty, 27th. Patriots. He's had a great career, right? How about Jerry Hughes, the pass rusher? And those are just some of the guys drafted in the 20s. They all had really good careers. And how about the 32nd pick in the 2010 NFL draft? He won a Super Bowl with your Philadelphia Eagles, Patrick Robinson. Don't sell short talent. Talent still wins. It doesn't matter where you find it. A good team will find talent anywhere. But I appreciate Tom in the Villas for chiming in at 609-403-0973. Another text that came in on text, I'll pop it up on the screen for everybody watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Again, you can watch the show. Just go to 973ESPN.com or follow the Sports Bash. 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Let's get this text in here. Just gotta pop it into the stream. There you go. Text says, I think the Eagles would be crazy to package those ones next year to move up in the draft unless it's a slam dunk pick that needs to be made. The Eagles have a boatload of picks next year. A couple things. One, I mentioned earlier that if there is a high caliber star level player, you should trade up. To me, the one guy I mentioned earlier, Kevon Thibodeau of Oregon, that guy to me reminds me a lot of Chandler Jones. If you can get him in the draft next year, you go get that guy. I don't care about the 3 picks. If you can get a game-changing pass rusher like Kevon Thibodeau of Oregon in the draft next year, you go out and get that dude. If Jalen Hurts ends up being a complete, utter failure this year, and you could package those 3 picks and move up and get a quarterback next year, you go get that quarterback. So I don't think it would be crazy at all to package those picks to move up. I think it depends on your situation. I think it depends on who's available. I think that you have to let it play out. I think you got to be open to all options. It's not crazy at all. I heard somebody say earlier this week, and I can remember the person who said it, I would give them credit, but they said that the NFL draft is all about quarterbacks, but not drafting quarterbacks. The NFL draft is about finding your starting quarterback, players who can blitz the quarterback, players who can protect the quarterback, and players who can intercept the quarterback. So in other words, the 4 most important positions in the NFL draft are quarterback, pass rusher, offensive line, and defensive back. So if you're the Eagles and you know that Brandon Graham is getting older and Derek Brown doesn't play very well and Josh Sweat gets injured for the 100th time in his career, and you can go into next year and you see Kevon Thibodeau hanging around and you have a chance to package up and go get him, you go get him. Not a crazy idea at all. Look at Washington. You think they won their division because they had 20 quarterbacks last year? No. Washington won their division because their defensive front is comprised of Chase Young, 2nd overall pick, added to Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Ryan Kerrigan, Montez Sweat. They have all of those pass rushing monsters up front. So it kind of didn't matter that your quarterbacks was the law firm of Haskins, Heineke, Allen, and Smith. Didn't matter. You had the worst starting quarterback group of any playoff team that made the postseason last year. And you did it because you have that defense. Remember, defense wins championships, offenses sell tickets. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Happy hour with the PT coming up on the other side here on 97.3 ESPN. This hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Matt Black Kia. Matt Black Kia wants to get you approved today. That's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike at Egg Harbor Township. Yes.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Wrapping up the show here, Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Final segment of the show. Of course, my appearance here on 97.3 ESPN. Being brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. There's always that one team that ruins your bracket. That's why this year I'm betting a tournament on FanDuel Sportsbook, because on FanDuel, your first bet is risk-free. New users get up to $1,000 in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. With games day and night, FanDuel Sportsbook has an easy-to-use app with always-on promotions, so your next chance to win with FanDuel is only minutes away. And if that's not enough, FanDuel wants to make you a millionaire. That's right, you. New and existing users get an additional shot at the payout every day you bet on the tourney. So if you want a shot at becoming a millionaire or even a thousandaire, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, use my promo code Hennig, and get in on the action this tournament weekend. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play and present in NJRPA. No purchase necessary. Restrictions apply for $1 million drawing. Risk-free offer for first online real money wager only site credit is non-withdrawable. Expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. I'm going to repeat some of these picks tomorrow when I'm on Sports Bash Saturday. I'll get a little more of them tomorrow. But here are the picks for the weekend I got going for you. So I mentioned the UFC picks earlier. I'm going Stipe Miocic, Tyron Woodley, Sean O'Malley, and Kamal Worthy. So those are my UFC picks for the weekend. I love the parlay of O'Malley and Miocic together. I like Woodley as a separate money line pick right there. When it comes to college basketball this weekend, you've heard the ad running all day today. I do really like Oral Roberts plus 11.5. They have covered the spread in 6 straight and 7 of their last 9. So the plus 11.5 is way too much in my opinion. So I think that is a good pick this weekend. I don't love this pick as much, but Syracuse plus 6.5 versus Houston, it feels a little bit too juicy to pass up. Also, I really like the idea of Oregon beating USC outright. That's a plus 110 on the money line. So those are some of my FanDuel Sportsbook picks. Again, promo code Hennig when you sign up with FanDuel Sportsbook. Get in on the $1 million drawing this tournament weekend. Got you some UFC, got you a little of the college basketball as well. Again, for more coverage of what's happened today, go to 97.3 ESPN.com to get full details what the Phillies did today. Because after Frank Close and I talked, the Phillies made some serious moves. Brandon Kinsler will be part of the Phillies bullpen this year with Archie Bradley and Hector Neris on the back end of the bullpen. Also, a very interesting decision about Tony Watson's future. Also, Spencer Howard has been optioned to the alternate training site and then will probably be in spring training. So, spring training AAA when they start up their season. All the details at 97.3ESPN.com. Thanks again to Frank Close, Paul Hudrick, Adam Caplan, Sean O'Malley, Pete Thompson for joining me today. I'll be back on tomorrow. Don't forget tomorrow morning, Jeff Nadu, Mike Gill at 9 a.m. 10 o'clock, Billy Schweim in the locker room. I'll be on for Sports Bash Saturday at 12 noon, and then Flyers at 1 p.m., then the NCAA tournament. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll catch you tomorrow.